A mysterious encounter between a millionaire and a homeless girl reveals a shocking secretone that will change both their lives forever. What happens next will stun you. Maxwell Bennett is a reclusive millionaire living in a massive, elegant mansion at the edge of town. Despite his wealth, the loneliness that has haunted him for years is ever present. A successful businessman, Maxwell has everything: luxury cars, private jets, and a seemingly endless supply of money. Yet, no matter how many material possessions he acquires, they are no substitute for the family he lost. The tragedy that befell him years ago, the disappearance of his only daughter, has left a permanent scar. Now, as an older man, his mansion is nothing more than an empty shell filled with memories of the past. The mansion, once full of laughter and life, feels cold and uninviting. Maxwell spends his days in isolation, attending meetings and handling his business affairs, with no one to share his success or pain. On the other side of town, Lily Harper, a young woman in her late 20s, lives a very different life. Once a promising college student with dreams of becoming a lawyer, Lily's world changed when she lost her family in a devastating car accident. With no relatives to turn to, she became homeless, forced to survive on the streets. The harshness of life has worn her down, but Lily is determined to survive. She spends her days looking for odd jobs, hoping to make just enough to eat. One cold winter morning, she notices a flyer in a local cafe, advertising a job as a housekeeper at a mansion. Desperate for any opportunity, she calls the number, never imagining that this job will lead her to an encounter that will change her life forever. The mansion's grand entrance is as intimidating as it is beautiful. But Lily is determined. She arrives on the doorstep, her heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. The door is answered by a stoic butler who leads her inside. As she steps into the foyer, the scale and grandeur of the home take her breath away. The marble floors shine beneath the glistening chandelier, and the walls are adorned with paintings of distant ancestors. Maxwell sits in his study, absorbed in work, his back to the door, unaware of her arrival. He's a man of few words, especially when it comes to interacting with others, and the housekeeper position is nothing more than an afterthought to him. But Lily's presence stirs something within him, a flicker of curiosity. As she cleans and dusts the corners of the mansion, she can't help but notice the family photos hanging on the walls, pictures of a young girl who looks remarkably like her. As the days go by, Lily settles into her role, trying her best to remain invisible in the vast mansion. Her days are spent in silence, cleaning rooms that are hardly ever used. Maxwell barely notices her, lost in his own world of memories and business meetings. But then, one fateful evening, as she cleans the study, her eyes fall upon an old photograph on the desk she's seen before, but never in this context. It's a picture of a smiling girl, no older than 8 or 9, standing next to a man who resembles Maxwell. The resemblance is uncanny, but what catches Lily's attention is the striking similarity to her own features. As she stares at the photo, her heart races. Could it be? Is it possible that the man she's working for is somehow connected to her past? The more she contemplates, the more questions arise, questions that threaten to uncover a truth neither of them is ready to face. Lily's curiosity grows with each passing day. The photograph she discovered has become an obsession, a mystery she cannot ignore. She spends her evenings after work in the mansion's grand library, where books on family history and old diaries are neatly organized in wooden shelves. The more she digs, the more she learns about Maxwell's past, about the child he once had, a daughter he lost under tragic circumstances. The details are vague, written in the cryptic language of an old family that no longer exists in the public eye. As Lily pores over the dusty pages, her mind is flooded with questions. Could this girl in the photograph be the same girl from her past? Could Maxwell's daughter somehow be connected to her own story? Meanwhile, Maxwell remains blissfully unaware of her investigation, focusing on his work and avoiding any connection with the outside world. One evening, after weeks of silence, Lily decides to confront Maxwell. Her heart pounds in her chest as she walks toward the study, unsure of how he will react. The mansion feels colder that night, the shadows cast long and eerie in the dim light. When she finally reaches the door, her hand hovers over the doorknob, but she hesitates. Maxwell is in the middle of a conversation with his business partner, and their words are filled with tension. But what catches Lily's attention is the mention of a name she recognizes from the old photograph. Her heart skips a beat. It's the name of Maxwell's daughter. Without thinking, she bursts into the room, her voice trembling as she asks the question that has been on her mind for weeks. Who is the girl in the photograph? Maxwell's face hardens as he hears the question. For a moment, T hears silence, broken only by the distant sound of the wind rattling against the windows. His eyes narrow as they lock onto Lily, a mixture of confusion and suspicion crossing his features. How do you know about that photograph? He asks, his voice cold and calculated. Lily takes a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest, but she remains composed. I found it, she replies simply. Maxwell rises from his chair, his usual calm demeanor slipping for the first time since she arrived. You should never have gone through my things, he mutters, more to himself than to her. But Lily doesn't flinch. She steps closer, her eyes unwavering. I need to understand. You don't talk about your past, and I need to know why. You owe me that much. Maxwell exhales sharply, his eyes flickering with emotion. He paces the room, wrestling with an internal struggle. Finally, he stops, his back turned to her. That girl, she was my daughter, he says softly, almost as if the words hurt to say. Her name was Emily. She died when she was just a child, a victim of a terrible accident. The weight of his words hangs in the air, and for a moment, Lily can't find her voice. She's always known that there was something painful about Maxwell, some invisible scar that he kept buried deep inside. But hearing him speak about Emily, it's as if the mansion's walls have suddenly shifted, revealing the truth behind them. Lily feels a pang of sadness for him, but also a surge of compassion she hadn't anticipated. She steps forward, her voice gentle. I am sorry for your loss, but you never told me. Why did you keep her a secret from everyone, even me? Maxwell turns to face her, his eyes darkened with a mix of grief and regret. Because it's easier to keep the past buried than to face it, he admits. I never wanted anyone to know. Emily, she was the light of my life, and losing her shattered me. I thought if I could erase all reminders of her, I could escape the pain. But now, his voice breaks, and he falters, as though the floodgates are about to open. The silence between them deepens, but it's not uncomfortable. For the first time, Lily sees Maxwell not as the powerful, untouchable millionaire, but as a man who has been broken by tragedy. The revelation makes her rethink everything she thought she knew about him. In that moment, a bond begins to form between them, something fragile yet undeniable, built on shared grief and understanding. Lily's curiosity grows with each passing day. The photograph she discovered has become an obsession, a mystery she cannot ignore. She spends her evenings after work in the mansion's grand library, where books on family history and old diaries are neatly organized in wooden shelves. The more she digs, the more she learns about Maxwell's past, about the child he once had, a daughter he lost under tragic circumstances. The details are vague, written in the cryptic language of an old family that no longer exists in the public eye. As Lily pores over the dusty pages, her mind is flooded with questions. Could this girl in the photograph be the same girl from her past? Could Maxwell's daughter somehow be connected to her own story? Meanwhile, Maxwell remains blissfully unaware of her investigation, focusing on his work and avoiding any connection with the outside world. One evening, after weeks of silence, Lily decides to confront Maxwell. Her heart pounds in her chest as she walks toward the study, unsure of how he will react. The mansion feels colder that night, the shadows cast long and eerie in the dim light. When she finally reaches the door, her hand hovers over the doorknob, but she hesitates. Maxwell is in the middle of a conversation with his business partner, and their words are filled with tension. But what catches Lily's attention is the mention of a name she recognizes from the old photograph. Her heart skips a beat. It's the name of Maxwell's daughter. Without thinking, she bursts into the room, her voice trembling as she asks the question that has been on her mind for weeks. Who is the girl in the photograph? Maxwell's face hardens as he hears the question. For a moment, T hears silence, broken only by the distant sound of the wind rattling against the windows. His eyes narrow as they lock onto Lily, a mixture of confusion and suspicion crossing his features. "How do you know about that photograph?" he asks, his voice cold and calculated. Lily takes a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest, but she remains composed. "I found it," she replies simply. Maxwell rises from his chair, his usual calm demeanor slipping for the first time since she arrived. "You should never have gone through my things," he mutters, more to himself than to her. But Lily doesn't flinch. She steps closer, her eyes unwavering. "I need to understand. You don't talk about your past, and I need to know why. You owe me that much." Maxwell exhales sharply, his eyes flickering with emotion. He paces the room, wrestling with an internal struggle. Finally, he stops, his back turned to her. "That girl, she was my daughter," he says softly, almost as if the words hurt to say. "Her name was Emily. She died when she was just a child, a victim of a terrible accident." The weight of his words hangs in the air, and for a moment, Lily can't find her voice. She's always known that there was something painful about Maxwell, some invisible scar that he kept buried deep inside. But hearing him speak about Emily, it's as if the mansion's walls have suddenly shifted, revealing the truth behind them. Lily feels a pang of sadness for him, but also a surge of compassion she hadn't anticipated. She steps forward, her voice gentle. "I am sorry for your loss, but you never told me. Why did you keep her a secret from everyone, even me?" Maxwell turns to face her, his eyes darkened with a mix of grief and regret. "Because it's easier to keep the past buried than to face it," he admits. "I never wanted anyone to know. Emily, she was the light of my life, and losing her shattered me. I thought if I could erase all reminders of her, I could escape the pain. But now," his voice breaks, and he falters, as though the floodgates are about to open. The silence between them deepens, but it's not uncomfortable. For the first time, Lily sees Maxwell not as the powerful, untouchable millionaire, but as a man who has been broken by tragedy. The revelation makes her rethink everything she thought she knew about him. In that moment, a bond begins to form between them, something fragile yet undeniable, built on shared grief and understanding. The wind howls outside, a violent reminder of the storm raging through the night. Inside, the mansion feels eerily quiet, as if the weight of Maxwell's confession has set a hush over everything. Lily and Maxwell sit in the grand, dimly lit drawing room, the fire crackling weakly in the hearth, casting long, flickering shadows across the walls. The silence between them feels almost unbearable, the air thick with unspoken words. Suddenly, the sharp sound of a thud echoes from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable cry of a child. Both Maxwell and Lily are on their feet in an instant. Maxwell's eyes widen in panic. Without thinking, he rushes toward the stairs, Lily close behind him. They reach the second floor, and there, sprawled across the floor, is a young girl, bloodied and bruised, but still breathing. Lily gasps as she kneels beside her, her heart pounding in her chest. The girl's eyes flutter open, and she looks at Maxwell, recognition flashing across her face. "Daddy?" she whispers weakly. Maxwell freezes, his face draining of color. The girl's words hang in the air, and for a moment, everything seems to stop. Maxwell's breath catches in his throat. This wasn't just any child, this was his daughter, the one he thought he had lost all those years ago. Maxwell falls to his knees beside the girl, his hands trembling as he reaches out to touch her face. The years of pain, regret, and grief that had consumed him for so long suddenly come crashing down, and he can't hold back the tears. Lily watches, unable to speak, as Maxwell holds the girl in his arms, whispering words of comfort. For the first time, he's truly allowing himself to feel the love he had locked away for so many years. The girl, barely conscious, looks up at him and murmurs, "I am so sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to leave you." Maxwell's heart breaks as he strokes her hair, fighting back tears. "You didn't leave me, sweetheart," he chokes out. "I lost you. I never should have let you go." Lily, still kneeling beside them, feels a lump rise in her throat. This moment is something she could never have imagined the man she once thought of as emotionally distant and unapproachable, reduced to nothing more than a father lost in grief for a child he thought he would never see again. But the moment is not without its complications. The girl's presence is a powerful reminder that Maxwell's life, his past, and everything he's worked so hard to build are being upended in ways he can't control. As much as he wants to hold on to her and never let go, he knows the truth this child, this unexpected reunion, will force him to confront everything he has tried to bury, and there will be no easy answers. The tension in the room is palpable, the stakes higher than they've ever been. Maxwell faces the harsh reality that the only way forward is to embrace the past he's tried so hard to outrun. But will he be able to do it? Can he truly heal the wounds that have haunted him for so long and rebuild the life he once thought was lost? The answers to those questions are still unknown, but one thing is certain: the journey ahead will be as difficult as it is transformative. The revelation is far from over. As Maxwell stands by the window of his office, lost in thought, his mind keeps returning to the memories of his late wife and the tragic accident that shattered their family. The overwhelming flood of emotions is becoming too much to bear, and the burden of guilt weighs heavily on him. It is in that moment, as the realization of what he has lost finally sinks in, that Ava, his daughter, suddenly walks into the room. She stands there, staring up at him with those same eyes that once belonged to the woman he loved. The connection between them is undeniable, a bond formed through blood and circumstance. The silence between them is thick, but Ava's presence breaks through the tension. Her vulnerability pulls Maxwell out of his reverie, reminding him that she is the future, his future. He kneels down to her level, and for the first time in years, he feels truly vulnerable. Ava watches him with an intensity that is beyond her years, as if she's silently waiting for him to take the first step, to show her that she is no longer alone. Maxwell takes her small hand in his, and it feels like the weight of the world has lifted from his shoulders. He no longer sees her as a stranger, but as his daughter, a part of him that he had been missing for far too long. In that fleeting moment, Maxwell realizes how much he has allowed himself to be consumed by the past. His late wife's memory had defined his every action, and it was only now, with Ava's presence in his life, that he truly understood what he had been missing. He had spent years building a fortress of wealth and success, but it had always been empty, hollow. Ava, though a reminder of everything he had lost, is also his chance to rebuild the future. Maxwell's mind races as he continues to hold Ava's hand. The past and present collide in an overwhelming rush, but in that very instant, he makes a choice to be present, to be the father he never thought he could be. He takes Ava in his arms, her fragile form melting into his chest as she clings to him, seeking solace in the only connection she's ever known. For the first time, Maxwell does not feel like a businessman. He is no longer the solitary figure he once was. He is simply a man, a father who has been given a second chance, a chance to right the wrongs that time had taken away. As he holds Ava, he whispers promises of a better life, of a future that is filled with love, laughter, and the warmth of family. But the emotional breakthrough is not without its challenges. As Ava slowly adjusts to her new life, Maxwell realizes that he must also confront the shadow of the past that has lingered for far too long. The truth about his late wife's sudden death, the secrets that had been kept from him, slowly begin to surface. As the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, Maxwell feels a sense of betrayal and confusion. Why had he been kept in the dark for so long? Despite these revelations, Maxwell understands that he must put the past to rest. He cannot allow the past to define his relationship with Ava any longer. With renewed purpose, he sets out to uncover the full story of his wife's death, but with one fundamental change. He does not need answers to move forward anymore. He has Ava, his daughter, be his side, and that is enough to heal the wounds that have plagued him for so long. The aftermath of the revelation leaves both Maxwell and Ava navigating uncharted waters. While the connection between father and daughter is undeniable, the weight of the truths that have come to light still lingers. Maxwell knows that healing is a long road, but he is determined to walk it with Ava by his side. The mansion, once cold and silent, is now filled with life. Ava has begun to settle into her new environment, and despite the grandness of the house, it's the smallest of moments that seem to matter. Master laughter echoing in the halls, the warmth of her small hand in his as they walk through the garden, and the quiet conversations they share over dinner. But as the days pass, Maxwell knows here is more to be done. The past cannot simply be erased, and the relationship he had with his wife needs to be confronted before he can fully embrace the future with Ava. He finds himself poring over old journals, letters, and photographs, seeking closure, seeking answers. But with each page turned, more questions arise. The strain of the situation also affects Ava, though she doesn't speak it aloud. Maxwell sees the subtle signs, the hesitation in her eyes when she speaks of her past life, the moments when she becomes withdrawn and distant, perhaps questioning her place in this world that has suddenly shifted. Maxwell knows that despite his best efforts, Ava's heart is not yet fully healed. And so, the father inside him rises with an unyielding resolve to do whatever it takes to make her feel safe and loved in this new life they are building together. Maxwell's decision to seek the truth about his wife's death continues to haunt him, but he knows it's the only way to finally move forward. He hires an investigator to dig deeper into the events surrounding her accident, determined to uncover the answers that have remained hidden for so long. The burden of guilt, while lighter now that Ava is with him, still haunts him. He cannot continue to live with the uncertainty that has shaped his decisions for years. In the meantime, Ava grows more comfortable in her new surroundings. The mansion, once an intimidating space filled with lonely corridors, begins to feel like a home thanks to her presence. They spend more time together, slowly building their relationship, despite the cracks in their pasts. Maxwell takes her to museums, parks, and even to dinner in the grand city that is just outside their doors. He takes on the role of a parent in ways he never thought possible, learning to balance his wealth with the need for love and connection. The following weeks are a whirlwind of adjustments for both Maxwell and Ava. While Ava has found comfort in the mansion, she still carries the weight of her past. She confides in Maxwell for the first time, sharing fragments of her former life, and it's in these moments that Maxwell feels the weight of his regret. The fact that he couldn't be there for her all these years hits him harder than he expected, but through their vulnerability, they grow closer. Ava begins to blossom under Maxwell's care, and in return, Maxwell feels a sense of redemption that he never thought possible. The house, once a place of mourning for him, transforms into a place where healing begins. They attend therapy together, confronting their fears, their emotions, and their past's own conversation at a time. Maxwell learns to accept that the guilt he has carried for so long cannot be undone overnight. But with each step they take forward, he is no longer alone in his pain. One evening, as they share a simple meal in the kitchen, the air shifts. Ava looks up at him with a tenderness that melts the walls he has built around his heart. She smiles, genuinely this time, and in that moment, Maxwell realizes that the greatest gift he could have ever received was not wealth or status, but the chance to finally be the father she needed all along. The road ahead is still uncertain, but together, they are no longer strangers, they are family. Maxwell and Ava's relationship continues to evolve, and though the scars of the past remain, they begin to forge a new bond. Ava's laughter echoes through the mansion as they share more and more memories. The quiet walks in the garden, the art lessons Maxwell arranges for her, and even the simple moments when they sit together, watching a movie. All of these little details slowly stitch their lives together in a way that Maxwell hadn't anticipated. The city, once a daunting and cold backdrop to their story, now feels like home. They begin to interact with the community, slowly opening up to friends and neighbors who have long heard rumors about the reclusive millionaire. Maxwell starts to use his wealth in ways he never considered before. He donates to local charities, funds scholarships, and helps children who are in need, something he had promised to do many years ago, but had never fulfilled until now. As for Ava, she grows into her own person. The trauma of her past, though not forgotten, is overshadowed by the love and support she now receives. She applies herself to her studies, finds a passion for painting, and even starts making new friends her age. She begins to see her father not just as the man who saved her, but as someone who truly loves her for who she is. She has learned to trust again, and in doing so, she gives Maxwell the greatest gift of all, the gift of forgiveness. It is during one of these quiet moments, when they are simply sitting together on the balcony overlooking the estate, that Maxwell is struck by a simple yet profound realization. The mansion doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. All the success in the world means nothing without the people you love. And as he watches Ava, finally beginning to smile in a way that feels like a true expression of happiness. Maxwell knows that this journey is far from over, but it is one he is finally ready to embark on with his daughter at his side. Months have passed since Maxwell and Ava first discovered the truth. The mansion that once felt like a place of cold solitude is now filled with warmth, laughter, and life. It stands as a symbol of the transformation not only of its walls but of the people who live within them. Maxwell, who had once lived in isolation, has slowly allowed the love for his daughter to rebuild him, piece by piece. Where once the mansion's halls were eerily quiet, now they echo with footsteps, conversations, and the bustle of everyday life. Ava, once a homeless girl wandering the streets, now walks with her head held high, her dreams becoming tangible. Maxwell, though still carrying the scar of his loss, no longer allows that pain to control him. The love he shares with Ava fills the void he once tried to ignore. She is his daughter, and together, they've created a new life, a life built on understanding, healing, and hope. Maxwell's transformation isn't just visible in the warmth of his home. It extends to the way he interacts with the world around him. No longer the cold and distant businessman, he becomes deeply involved in local charities, using his wealth to support causes he's passionate about. Whether it's through funding community centers, sponsoring education, or making anonymous donations to shelters, Maxwell finds a new purpose in life, one that goes beyond building his empire. But his greatest joy remains in the quiet moments he shares with Ava. Watching her grow into a young woman with aspirations, he is filled with pride. He sees her as more than just the child he never knew he had. She is his second chance at redemption, a chance to rewrite the mistakes of his past. Ava's success, in every sense of the word, has become Maxwell's victory too. The day Ava graduates high school is a day Maxwell will never forget. He watches from the front row, his heart swelling with pride as his daughter walks across the stage, her future unfolding before her. It isn't just a graduation. It's a testament to the strength of their bond, the resilience they've shown, and the journey they've taken together. Ava's life, once marked by hardship and uncertainty, is now full of promise and hope. Later that evening, they sit together on the balcony of their mansion, the city lights twinkling below them. The air is cool, and the sky is clear. For a moment, everything feels perfect. Ava, now confident and full of ambition, turns to Maxwell, and for the first time she realizes how far they've come. She has a family, a father who loves her unconditionally, and the future is hers to shape. As the sun sets on another day, Maxwell reflects on the life he has now, the life that he never thought he deserved. His mansion, once a place of solitude and grief, has become a home filled with love, and as he gazes at Ava, now a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, he feels an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She has healed him in ways he never thought possible. In the quiet stillness of their home, Maxwell knows that this is just the beginning of their story. With Ava by his side, he has found a new sense of purpose, one that transcends his past and gives him hope for the future. Their journey together is a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Have you ever had the chance to start over, to rewrite your story and open your heart to someone new? What would you do if given that second chance?